When sports legend Michael Jordan walks into Judge Abigail Hartwell's courtroom without a lawyer to defend himself in a high-stakes patent battle, she can't help but laugh. After 30 years on the bench, she's seen it all, but never someone so famous being so foolish. Little does she know, Jordan's fumbling performance is hiding a brilliant legal strategy. As Apex Sports' expensive lawyers present their seemingly airtight case, the judge continues to mock Jordan's amateur approach. But behind his messy papers and confused demeanor, a trap is being set that will shock everyone in the courtroom, especially the judge who underestimated him. Judge Abigail Hartwell banged her gavel 3 times. The sound echoed through courtroom 7 of the Chicago Federal Building. "The court is now in session," she announced, her voice sharp as a knife. "Case number 2025, CV 7842, Apex Sport Industries versus Jordan Performance." Judge Hartwell had spent 30 years on the bench. In that time, she'd seen it all: sports icons, movie stars, crooked politicians. None of them scared her. None of them impressed her either. So when Michael Jordan walked into her courtroom without a lawyer by his side, she couldn't help the tiny smirk that formed on her lips. Another rich guy who thought rules didn't apply to him. "Mr. Jordan," she said, glancing down at her papers, "my records show you're representing yourself today. Is that correct?" Jordan stood up. He wore a simple dark suit, no tie. "Yes, Your Honor." A whisper ran through the courtroom. Even the court reporter raised her eyebrows. "Bold choice," Judge Hartwell said. "Well, let's not waste time. Opening statements, please. Apex Sport, you're up first." Nathaniel Pierce, Apex Sports attorney, approached the bench. He was tall and polished in an expensive suit, with slick gray hair and glasses that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Your Honor," Pierce began, "this case is quite simple. Mr. Jordan's company stole our client's revolutionary athletic shoe design. We have the patent. We have the proof. By the end of this trial, the facts will speak for themselves." Judge Hartwell nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Mr. Jordan, your opening statement." Jordan walked to the front of the courtroom. He pulled some wrinkled papers from his pocket and dropped one. As he bent to pick it up, someone in the gallery chuckled. Your Honor," he began, his voice quieter than expected. "I'm here because Apex Sport is trying to steal what my team created." He shuffled his papers, losing his place. "The shoe design in question uses a, special cushioning that—" Jordan paused, looking confused. "Sorry, I have some diagrams somewhere." Judge Hartwell couldn't help it. A small laugh escaped her lips. "Mr. Jordan," she said, "this isn't a basketball game. In my courtroom, we follow proper legal procedure. Do you have your evidence organized and ready to present?" "I think so, Your Honor," he replied, still shuffling papers. The gallery erupted in laughter. Even the bailiff cracked a smile. Judge Hartwell raised her hand for quiet, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. She'd seen this before. Wealthy people thinking they could wing it in court without proper preparation. From the plaintiff's table, Nathaniel Pierce shot Jordan a look of smug satisfaction. This was going to be easier than he thought. In the gallery, a young woman with short black hair watched with growing concern. Tara Lynn, Jordan's head designer, twisted her hands nervously in her lap. This wasn't going as planned. "Perhaps," Judge Hartwell suggested, not unkindly, "you should have hired an attorney, Mr. Jordan. Patent law is complicated. It's not something most people can handle without legal training." "I'll manage, Your Honor," Jordan replied, finally organizing his papers. "Very well," the judge said. "Apex Sport, please present your case." As Pierce approached with his team of 3 assistants, wheeling in carefully organized evidence boxes, Judge Hartwell leaned back in her chair. She caught the eye of her clerk and gave a tiny eye roll. The clerk smiled back, knowingly. Pierce set up a sleek digital presentation. Your Honor, if I may proceed? She nodded. The courtroom lights dimmed, and a crystal-clear slide appeared on the screen. Apex Sport filed this patent, Pierce began. As you can see, the design is revolutionary. Judge Hartwell listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Jordan. He was taking notes, his face giving nothing away. Mr. Jordan's company began producing an identical design, Pierce continued. The timeline alone proves our case. Throughout the presentation, Jordan remained oddly calm. Once, Judge Hartwell caught him staring at a seemingly random point on the courtroom wall. Was he even paying attention? Mr. Jordan, she interrupted, are you with us? Yes, Your Honor, he replied, blinking as if returning from deep thought. Good, she said, because I won't have you wasting this court's time if you're not taking these proceedings seriously. Jordan's face reddened slightly, but he nodded. As the morning session continued, Judge Hartwell found herself increasingly irritated by Jordan's casual approach. When he finally objected to something, his argument was so poorly framed that she had to cut him off. Mr. Jordan, that's not how hearsay works, she explained with thinly veiled impatience. Perhaps you could benefit from Legal Procedure 101. The courtroom tittered again. Little did Judge Hartwell know, the eccentric sports icon sitting before her wasn't nearly as unprepared as he seemed. Behind his fumbling exterior and messy papers, Michael Jordan was setting a trap that would soon leave everyone in the courtroom, including her, completely stunned. 6 months earlier, the design studio hummed with energy. Bright lights reflected off sleek prototypes as Michael Jordan and Tara Lynn bent over a workbench. Between them sat a shoe no bigger than a standard sneaker. It didn't look special, just a rubber sole with some stitching, but both knew it could change the world. Run the test again, Jordan said, his eyes never leaving the shoe. Tara tapped on her tablet. The shoe's cushioning glowed faintly along its edges. Shock absorption holding at 98% efficiency, she reported, eyes wide. That's 3 times better than anything on the market. Jordan didn't smile. He rarely did when working, but a spark lit his eyes. If this works at scale, he said, we could make a shoe that lasts a season on the court without wearing out, or supports a runner for 1,000 miles. We did it, Tara whispered. We actually did it. That's when Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Reginald Voss is here, he said. Tara's smile faded. Apex Sports CEO? Why? He wants to talk about a partnership, Jordan sighed. Cover this up. I'll meet him in the conference room. Are you sure that's wise? Tara asked. Apex Sport has stolen designs before. Let me worry about that. Jordan headed for the door. Just hide everything important. Reginald Voss was tall and polished, with perfect teeth and a too-firm handshake. Michael, thanks for seeing me, Voss boomed. 2 assistants flanked him, tablets in hand. What can I do for you, Reginald? Jordan asked, not bothering with small talk. I'll get right to it. Apex Sport wants to partner with you on athletic footwear. We have the manufacturing capabilities you lack, and you have the creative spark our designers sometimes miss. Jordan nodded slowly. Interesting. What did you have in mind? A tour today, and then we'll talk details. I'd love to see what you're working on. Voss smiled like a hungry shark. Jordan seemed to consider this. A quick tour then, but some areas are off limits. Ongoing research. Of course, Voss agreed quickly. As they walked through the facility, Jordan noticed Voss lingering in certain areas, his eyes taking in every detail. Once Jordan could have sworn he saw one of Voss's assistants snap a quick photo when they thought no one was looking. When they reached the main design studio doors, Jordan stopped. This area is restricted, Voss nodded in understanding, but Jordan caught the flash of disappointment in his eyes. Well, I've seen enough to know we could do great things together, Voss said, extending his hand. I'll have my people call your people. After Voss left, Jordan went straight to security. I want all footage of Voss's visit, he told the head of security. Every second. That night, Jordan replayed the footage in his office. There it was, Voss's assistant taking photos when Jordan's back was turned, Voss himself peering through a window into the restricted studio when he thought no one was watching. I knew it, Jordan muttered. 2 months later, Tara burst into Jordan's office, face flushed with anger. Apex Sport just filed a patent, she said, slapping a printout on his desk, for an athletic shoe that uses our shock-absorbing technology. They stole it, Michael. They stole our design. Jordan picked up the papers, scanning them calmly. Too calmly. You don't seem surprised, Tara said, studying his face. I'm not. Jordan leaned back in his chair. Voss never called about that partnership. I knew something was up. We have to fight this, Tara exclaimed. Call the lawyers. I already talked to them, Jordan said, standing and walking to the window. They say it'll be tough to prove. Voss was careful. So we just give up? Tara couldn't believe what she was hearing. I didn't say that. Jordan turned, a strange light in his eyes. I'm going to handle this myself. Tara's jaw dropped. You mean personally? In court? Yes. But Michael, you're not a lawyer. No, he agreed. I'm not. In the weeks that followed, Jordan's behavior grew increasingly odd. He canceled meetings, disappeared for hours. Once, Tara found him in his office at midnight, surrounded by legal textbooks, scribbling notes in margins. This is crazy, she said, picking up a book on patent law. We have a legal team for this. They'll expect a legal team, Jordan replied, without looking up. They won't expect me. That's because this is a terrible idea. Voss has the best lawyers money can buy. Jordan finally looked up, his eyes tired but determined. Sometimes you have to do things yourself. Is this about your ego? Tara asked. Proving you're smarter than everyone else? No, Jordan shook his head. It's about justice and strategy. Tara sighed, unconvinced. What strategy involves going to court unprepared against professional attorneys? Jordan smiled for the first time that night. Who said anything about being unprepared? He turned his notebook toward her. The pages were filled with precise notes, diagrams, and what looked like a timeline. I know exactly what I'm doing, he said quietly. Trust me. But as Tara looked at the determined face of her boss, she couldn't help but worry that this time, his famous confidence might be his downfall. What she didn't know was that Michael Jordan had more than just notes and diagrams. He had a plan that would shock everyone, especially one very skeptical judge. Back in the courtroom, the first day of trial continued after lunch. Judge Hartwell straightened her black robes and checked her watch. Nathaniel Pierce had already set up his next visual aid. A large screen showing side-by-side comparisons of both companies' shoe designs. As you can clearly see, Your Honor, Pierce said, pointing with a laser pointer, the similarities are undeniable. The internal cushioning, the support system, even the special lining. They're identical. From her elevated bench, Judge Hartwell nodded. Continue, Mr. Pierce. Apex Sports spent millions developing this technology, Pierce continued, clicking to the next slide. Years of research led to this breakthrough. Then, just weeks after we filed our patent, Mr. Jordan's company suddenly announced an identical product. In the gallery, reporters scribbled notes. This case had drawn media attention from around the world. Sports journalists, business reporters, and curious onlookers packed the rows of seats. We'd like to call our first witness, Pierce announced. Dr. Simon Caldwell, Apex Sports Head of Research and Development. A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses took the stand. After being sworn in, He settled nervously in the witness chair. Dr. Caldwell, Pierce began, please explain to the court your role in developing this shoe technology. I led the team that created the shock-absorbing lining, Caldwell explained. It's the key innovation that allows for greater support and durability. And when did you begin this work? Approximately 18 months ago, Caldwell answered confidently. Judge Hartwell watched as Pierce guided his witness through a detailed explanation of the technology. The attorney was skilled, breaking down complex concepts into understandable chunks. The judge found herself impressed by both the lawyer and the technology. Occasionally, she glanced at Jordan. He remained oddly calm, taking notes but raising few objections. Once, she caught him staring at a specific ceiling tile, seemingly lost in thought. Mr. Jordan, she interrupted sharply, are you with us? Jordan blinked and focused on her. Yes, Your Honor. Just considering the testimony. Judge Hartwell frowned. Well, consider it more actively, please. This is your case, after all. Few people in the gallery chuckled. Judge Hartwell allowed herself a small smile. She'd dealt with arrogant sports stars before, but usually they at least pretended to take court proceedings seriously. The testimony continued with Pierce calling a patent expert who explained the filing process and timeline. Once again, the evidence seemed damning for Jordan. As you can see, the expert concluded, Apex Sports filing predates any public mention of similar technology from Mr. Jordan's company. Judge Hartwell noticed Jordan writing something in his notebook. For a brief moment, she was curious about what strategy, if any, he was developing. Then she dismissed the thought. He was clearly out of his depth. Your Honor, Pierce said, I'd like to present our next piece of evidence. An assistant wheeled in a covered object. With a dramatic flourish, Pierce removed the cloth to reveal a shoe prototype. This is the working prototype we developed before filing the patent, Pierce explained, created entirely by Apex Sports' team. From her seat in the gallery, Tara stiffened. She leaned forward, studying the device, her eyes narrowing in recognition. Judge Hartwell noticed the young woman's reaction and made a mental note. Something about that prototype had triggered a response. Would you like to examine the device, Your Honor? Pierce offered. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Judge Hartwell took the prototype, turning it carefully in her hands. Despite her legal background, she had studied sports engineering in college. Something about the design seemed elegant, efficient. Impressive, she admitted, returning the device. Pierce smiled, sensing victory. Now we'd like to call our final witness of the day, Reginald Voss, CEO of Apex Sport. The tall, polished man Jordan had met months ago strode confidently to the witness stand. After being sworn in, he sat with perfect posture, exuding confidence. Mr. Voss, Pierce began, please tell the court about your company's commitment to innovation. Voss launched into a well-rehearsed speech about Apex Sports' history of breakthroughs. Judge Hartwell listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Jordan to gauge his reaction. To her surprise, Jordan was now fully engaged, watching Voss with intense focus. There was something almost predatory in his gaze. For the first time, Judge Hartwell felt a flicker of doubt. Was there more to Jordan's strategy than she'd assumed? Did you have any contact with Mr. Jordan or his company prior to developing this technology? Pierce asked. Minimal, Voss replied smoothly. We had one brief meeting about potential collaboration, but nothing came of it. Judge Hartwell noticed a ghost of a smile cross Jordan's face. When Voss finished his testimony, Pierce approached the bench. Your Honor, Mr. Jordan now has the opportunity to cross-examine our witness. Judge Hartwell turned to Jordan. Mr. Jordan, would you like to question Mr. Voss? Jordan stood slowly. Not at this time, Your Honor. I'll reserve my questions for later. Voss looked surprised, then relieved. He stepped down from the witness stand, shooting a triumphant glance at Jordan as he returned to his seat. "Very well," Judge Hartwell said, unable to hide her disappointment. She had expected at least some attempt at a defense. "Mr. Pierce, please continue." "Your Honor," Pierce said with confidence, "we've presented clear evidence that Apex Sport developed and patented this technology first. Mr. Jordan's company clearly copied our client's innovative design. The evidence speaks for itself." Judge Hartwell nodded, finding herself agreeing with Pierce's assessment. The case seemed straightforward. "Mr. Jordan," she said, turning to the sports icon, "you'll have your chance to present your defense tomorrow. I suggest you prepare more thoroughly than you have today." Jordan looked up from his notebook. "I appreciate your concern, Your Honor." Something in his tone made Judge Hartwell pause. There was a confidence there that didn't match his apparently weak position. As she prepared to adjourn for the day, she noticed Jordan staring at that same spot on the wall again. "Mr. Jordan, are you even paying attention?" she asked sharply. Jordan turned to her with clear eyes. "Always, Your Honor. More than you might think." For some reason she couldn't explain, Judge Hartwell felt a chill run down her spine. Perhaps there was more to Michael Jordan than met the eye. But what could he possibly have planned that would counter the mountain of evidence against him? "Court is adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning," Judge Hartwell announced, banging her gavel. As people filed out of the courtroom, Nathaniel Pierce walked past, barely hiding his smug smile. "Better luck tomorrow, Jordan," he said quietly, "though I doubt luck will be enough." Jordan simply nodded. "See you tomorrow, Pierce." In the hallway outside, reporters swarmed around both men. "Mr. Jordan, will you hire an attorney now?" one shouted. "Mr. Pierce, is this case as clear-cut as it seems?" called another. Jordan pushed through the crowd without answering. Tara caught up to him at the courthouse steps. "That was brutal," she said. "Voss lied under oath about your meeting." "I noticed," Jordan replied calmly. "And that prototype, that was our design. They just changed the outer styling." "I know." Tara grabbed his arm, stopping him. "Michael, you need to do something. They're destroying us in there." Jordan glanced back at the courthouse, his face unreadable. "I'm about to." 20 minutes later, they sat in a rented office across from the courthouse. Jordan had converted it into a temporary workspace with computers, whiteboards, and boxes of files. "What are we doing here?" Tara asked, watching Jordan boot up a laptop. "Preparing," he answered. "I need you to access our building security logs from the day Voss visited." "The security logs? Why?" "Just trust me." While Tara worked, Jordan made a phone call. "It's me," he said to the person on the other end. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" He listened for a moment. "Good. Remember, timing is everything." Tara looked up from her computer. "I have the logs. What now?" "Find all footage of Voss and his team. I want every second they were in our building." For hours, they combed through security videos. Tara gasped when she spotted what Jordan was looking for. "There," she pointed at the screen. "Voss's assistant taking photos in the restricted area." Jordan nodded. "And here," he said, forwarding to another clip. "Voss himself looking through the studio window after I told him that area was off limits." "This proves they were spying," Tara said excitedly. "But is it enough to win the case?" "Not by itself," Jordan admitted. "We need more." He pulled out his phone and sent a text. Within minutes, it buzzed with a response. Jordan smiled as he read it. "What?" Tara asked. "Let's just say I've been working on this case longer than Voss realizes." As midnight approached, Jordan was still preparing. He had assembled what looked like a small shoe prototype on the desk. "What's that?" Tara asked, yawning. "A demonstration," Jordan replied. For tomorrow. Shouldn't you be working on your legal arguments instead? Jordan looked up, a glint in his eye. Sometimes the best legal argument isn't a legal argument at all. Morning came too quickly. Back in the courtroom, Judge Hartwell called the session to order. Mr. Jordan, are you ready to present your defense? She asked, expecting the same fumbling performance as yesterday. Jordan stood. Actually, Your Honor, I'd like to request a one-day recess. Surprised murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Hartwell frowned. A recess? On what grounds? I need to reconsider my approach, Jordan said, sounding defeated. Given the strong case against me. More whispers. Pierce couldn't hide his triumphant smile. Judge Hartwell studied Jordan's face. Was he finally admitting defeat, or was this part of some strategy she couldn't see? Your Honor, Pierce interrupted, we object to this delay. Mr. Jordan had ample time to prepare his defense. I understand, Jordan said quickly, but after yesterday's testimony, I realize I may need professional assistance. Laughter rippled through the gallery. Judge Hartwell allowed herself a small smile, so he was finally admitting he needed a lawyer. While I'm tempted to deny your request, Mr. Jordan, she said, I'll grant a one-day recess, but don't waste our time tomorrow. Thank you, Your Honor, Jordan said, bowing his head slightly. As the courtroom emptied, Pierce approached Jordan. Finally realized you're out of your depth, he asked. Something like that, Jordan replied. Back at their temporary office, Tara paced anxiously. I don't understand. Why did you ask for a delay when we spent all night preparing? Because, Jordan explained, typing rapidly on his laptop, I want them overconfident. Voss thinks I'm giving up. But what are we actually doing today? Tara demanded. Two things, Jordan said, not looking up. First, we're finishing this. He pointed to the shoe prototype they'd worked on last night. And second, Jordan finally looked up, his expression serious. We're meeting someone important. Later that afternoon, a woman arrived at their office. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked nervous. Ms. Carter, Jordan greeted her. Thank you for coming. I'm risking my career being here, the woman said quietly. I know, Jordan replied, but it's the right thing to do. Tara looked confused. Who is she? Serena Carter, Jordan explained. Until last week, she was Apex Sports' head of research and development. Tara's eyes widened. Wait, not Dr. Caldwell? Caldwell was promoted after I left, Serena explained. I couldn't stay after what Voss asked us to do. For the next hour, Jordan and Serena talked quietly while Tara finished their shoe demonstration. As evening fell, Jordan seemed more confident than ever. Are you sure about this? Tara asked as they packed up. It's unorthodox, even for you. Jordan smiled, his eyes reflecting the glow of his computer screen. Sometimes innovation isn't just about design. That's not an answer, Tara sighed. Trust me, Jordan said, closing his laptop. By this time tomorrow, Judge Hartwell won't be laughing anymore. That night, while Voss and Pierce celebrated their seemingly inevitable victory with expensive whiskey, Michael Jordan made one final preparation for the next day's court session. A simple cardboard box that would change everything. Morning arrived with a buzz of excitement around the courthouse. News of Jordan's requested recess had spread, with many speculating he was preparing to surrender. Reporters crowded the steps, cameras ready. Mr. Jordan, have you hired an attorney? Will you settle with Apex Sport? Are you giving up the case? Jordan walked through them without answering, the cardboard box tucked under his arm. Tara followed close behind, her face a mask of calm that hid her nervousness. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Reginald Voss sat confidently at the plaintiff's table, whispering with Pierce. They both looked up when Jordan entered, eyeing the box with curiosity. "What's he up to now?" Voss muttered. "Probably his surrender terms," Pierce replied with a smirk. Judge Hartwell entered, and everyone stood as she took her seat. She noticed Jordan looked different today. Gone was the fumbling, distracted demeanor. Instead, he stood straight, his eyes clear and focused. "Court is now in session," she announced. "Mr. Jordan, yesterday you requested time to reconsider your approach. Have you decided to seek legal counsel?" "No, Your Honor," Jordan replied, his voice stronger than before. "I'll continue representing myself." Judge Hartwell sighed dramatically. "Very well. Are you ready to present your defense?" "I am, Your Honor. But first, I'd like to call a surprise witness." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Pierce jumped to his feet. "Objection! We received no notice of additional witnesses." Judge Hartwell frowned. "Mr. Jordan, this isn't a TV drama. That's not how real court proceedings work." "I understand, Your Honor," Jordan replied calmly. "But these are special circumstances. My witness only came forward yesterday after seeing Apex Sports' testimony." Judge Hartwell studied Jordan's face. There was something different about him today. A quiet confidence she hadn't seen before. "This better be good," she warned. "Who is this witness?" "Serena Carter, former head of research and development at Apex Sport." The name sent a visible shock through the Apex Sport team. Voss's face paled. Pierce stood again, his composure slipping. "Objection. Ms. Carter is bound by a confidentiality agreement with Apex Sport. She cannot testify about company matters." "That's not entirely accurate," Jordan countered. "Ms. Carter's agreement has exceptions for illegal activity, which is precisely what she wishes to address." The room fell silent. Judge Hartwell leaned forward, her interest piqued despite herself. "Mr. Pierce, your objection is noted but overruled. I'll allow the witness." She turned to Jordan. "This better be relevant, Mr. Jordan." "It is, Your Honor. Thank you." A court officer opened the door, and Serena Carter entered. She looked nervous but determined as she took the oath and settled into the witness stand. "Ms. Carter," Jordan began, "until recently, what was your position at Apex Sport?" "I was head of research and development for 8 years," she replied, her voice steady despite her obvious tension. "And why did you leave?" Serena took a deep breath. "I resigned last week due to ethical concerns about the shoe technology at issue in this case." Another murmur swept through the courtroom. Voss was now whispering urgently to Pierce. "Could you elaborate on those concerns?" Jordan asked. "The technology wasn't developed by Apex Sport," Serena stated clearly. "We were ordered to reverse engineer Mr. Jordan's prototype after Mr. Voss visited his facility." The courtroom erupted. Judge Hartwell banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in the court!" When quiet returned, Pierce was on his feet again, his face flushed with anger. "Your Honor, these are baseless accusations. Where is the proof?" "An excellent question," Judge Hartwell agreed, turning to Jordan. "Do you have evidence to support this testimony?" "I do, Your Honor." Jordan finally opened his mysterious cardboard box. From it, he removed a laptop and a small shoe prototype. "Ms. Carter," he continued, "did Mr. Voss specifically instruct your team to copy my design?" "Yes," she answered firmly. "After his visit to your facility, he called an emergency meeting. He showed us photos his assistant had taken and told us to recreate the technology as quickly as possible." Voss's face had gone from pale to red. He scribbled something and pushed it toward Pierce. "And what about Dr. Caldwell, who testified yesterday?" Jordan asked. "Simon was promoted to my position after I questioned the ethics of what we were doing," Serena explained. "He was willing to go along with Voss's plan." Pierce stood again. "Your Honor, this is hearsay and speculation." "Is it?" Jordan asked calmly. He connected his laptop to the courtroom's display system. With the court's permission, I'd like to show some evidence. Judge Hartwell nodded, now fully engaged. Proceed, Mr. Jordan. The screen lit up with security footage from Jordan's facility. It clearly showed Voss's assistant taking photos in restricted areas, and Voss himself peering through windows he'd been told were off-limits. This proves nothing, Pierce argued. Looking isn't stealing. Perhaps not, Jordan agreed, but this might be more convincing. He clicked to the next file, emails between Voss and Serena discussing how to repurpose Jordan's design. Pierce stared at the screen in shock. Where did you get those? Ms. Carter provided them, Jordan explained, along with these. The next images showed side-by-side comparisons of internal components, Jordan's original designs and Apex Sports copies. They were identical. Judge Hartwell's expression had transformed completely. The skepticism was gone, replaced by growing shock as the evidence mounted. Your Honor, Jordan said, there's more. Ms. Carter has provided internal memos showing that Apex Sport had no similar technology in development before Voss's visit to my facility. Their entire claim is fraudulent. Voss could no longer contain himself. This is a setup, he shouted, rising from his chair. You can't believe this. Mr. Voss, Judge Hartwell warned, control yourself or I'll have you removed. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted dramatically. Now it was Pierce who looked flustered and unprepared, while Jordan appeared calm and in control. Judge Hartwell turned to Serena. Ms. Carter, you understand the seriousness of your testimony. You're accusing Apex Sport of corporate espionage and fraud. I do, Your Honor, Serena replied. That's why I resigned my position and came forward. It was the right thing to do. Bah. As the morning session continued, Judge Hartwell found herself watching Jordan with new eyes. The bumbling, distracted man from yesterday was gone. In his place stood someone precise and methodical who had apparently planned this moment from the beginning. Had it all been an act? Had he deliberately appeared unprepared to lull Apex Sport into overconfidence? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Judge Abigail Hartwell was no longer laughing at Michael Jordan. Ms. Carter, Jordan continued, could you tell the court exactly what happened after Mr. Voss returned from his visit to my facility? Serena Carter sat straight in the witness chair, her hands folded in her lap. She'd been Apex Sports' star designer for almost a decade. Now she was their worst nightmare. Mr. Voss called an emergency meeting that same afternoon, she began. He was extremely excited. He showed us photos his assistant had taken secretly during the tour and said he'd seen a gold mine of ideas. In the plaintiff's section, Voss's face darkened. He scribbled a note and slid it to Pierce, who shook his head slightly. Did he specifically mention my athletic shoe technology? Jordan asked. Yes. He was particularly interested in the shock-absorbing lining. He said it was the key to making shoes perform better for longer periods. And what did he ask your team to do? He told us to drop everything else and focus on recreating what he'd seen. His exact words were, I want this technology before Jordan can patent it. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Judge Hartwell leaned forward, completely absorbed in the testimony. This was not at all what she had expected when the day began. Did you raise any concerns about this directive? Jordan continued. Serena nodded. I told Mr. Voss that what he was suggesting sounded like corporate espionage. I suggested we pursue a legitimate partnership instead. And how did he respond? He said, and I quote, "Why pay for what we can take for free?" Another ripple of reaction spread through the gallery. Voss was now red-faced with anger. That's a lie, he shouted, unable to contain himself. She's making this up. Mr. Voss, Judge Hartwell warned sharply. One more outburst and I'll have you removed from my courtroom. Jordan remained calm, seemingly unaffected by the drama. Ms. Carter, do you have any evidence to support your testimony? Yes, she replied. I kept notes from all our meetings. I also saved emails and text messages where these directives were given. Your Honor, Jordan addressed the judge, I'd like to enter these documents into evidence. He handed a folder to the court clerk, who passed it to Judge Hartwell. She opened it and began reviewing the contents, her expression growing more serious with each page. Pierce finally recovered enough to stand. Your Honor, these documents should be inadmissible. They contain proprietary Apex Sport information that Ms. Carter had no right to remove from the company. Actually, Jordan countered, according to Apex Sport's own employment contract, which I've included in that folder, employees are both protected and obligated to report potential illegal activities. Ms. Carter was acting within her rights. Judge Hartwell nodded. I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Jordan on this point. The documents are admitted. Pierce sat down heavily, looking stunned. Voss was now whispering urgently to one of his assistants, who quickly left the courtroom. Ms. Carter, Jordan continued, what happened after you expressed these concerns? I was gradually sidelined. Tasks were reassigned. Then, 2 weeks ago, Simon Caldwell was promoted to my position, and I was transferred to a different department. Did that surprise you? No. I'd already started looking for another job because I couldn't ethically continue at Apex Sport. When they transferred me, I resigned immediately. One final question, Jordan said. Did Apex Sport have any similar athletic shoe technology and development before Voss's visit to my facility? No, Serena stated firmly. We were working on completely different approaches. Our research was at least 2 years away from anything close to your design. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Jordan turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to present one more piece of evidence before Mr. Pierce cross-examines the witness. Judge Hartwell nodded. Proceed. Jordan placed his small shoe prototype on the evidence table. This is a demonstration unit I created to illustrate how Apex Sports' supposedly original design is actually a copy of mine. He activated the device, which projected a holographic display showing both designs layer by layer. As each component appeared, the identical nature of the technologies became impossible to deny. As you can see, Jordan explained, even the internal arrangement of components is identical. The chances of 2 teams independently creating such similar designs are essentially 0. The courtroom had fallen completely silent. The evidence was overwhelming. Your Honor, Pierce said, finally rising again, we request a brief recess to consult with our client. Judge Hartwell checked her watch. We'll break for lunch. Court will reconvene at 1 As the gallery emptied, Tara rushed to Jordan's side. That was amazing, she whispered. Did you see Voss's face? Jordan nodded slightly, keeping his expression neutral. We're not done yet. In the hallway, reporters swarmed around both parties. Pierce pushed through without comment, Voss close behind him with a security guard blocking cameras. Mr. Jordan, a reporter called out, was your confused performance yesterday an act? Jordan merely smiled. No comment. In a private conference room, Pierce faced Voss across the table. This is bad, Reginald, really bad. She's lying, Voss insisted, pacing the room. It's her word against mine. It's her word plus emails, texts, and documents against yours, Pierce corrected him. Not to mention the visual evidence of the copied technology. We need to settle this now. No, I won't give him the satisfaction. You might not have a choice, Pierce warned. If this continues, we're looking at more than losing a patent case. This could become a criminal matter. Voss stopped pacing. What are you saying? I'm saying corporate espionage is a crime. So is perjury, which you committed yesterday when you downplayed your meeting with Jordan. Voss's face paled. You're my lawyer. Fix this. I'm trying to, Pierce replied grimly. But you need to accept reality. Jordan outplayed us. Meanwhile, in another conference room, Judge Hartwell sat alone, reviewing the morning's evidence. 30 years on the bench had taught her to spot liars, and Serena Carter was telling the truth. The emails and documents corroborated her testimony perfectly. The judge found herself reassessing Michael Jordan. She'd dismissed him as an arrogant amateur, but now she wondered if she'd been the amateur all along. His strategy, appearing unprepared while gathering devastating evidence, was brilliant. When court reconvened, the tension was palpable. Pierce approached Jordan before the judge arrived. "My client is willing to discuss settlement terms," he said quietly. "I'm not interested in settling," Jordan replied. "Don't be stubborn. We can make this go away quietly." "That's not why I'm here." Before Pierce could respond, Judge Hartwell entered, and everyone stood. "Before we continue," she announced, "I want to clarify something. Ms. Carter, your testimony suggests not just patent infringement but potentially criminal activity. Do you understand the seriousness of these allegations?" "I do, Your Honor," Serena replied. "That's why I resigned my position and came forward. It was the right thing to do." Judge Hartwell nodded. "Mr. Pierce, you may cross-examine the witness." Pierce approached the stand, his earlier confidence gone. "Ms. Carter, isn't it true that you were passed over for promotion several times at Apex Sport?" "No," she replied calmly. "I was offered promotions twice and declined them to stay in research." "And you're not bitter about Mr. Caldwell's promotion?" "I was relieved. It meant I was no longer responsible for a project I believed was unethical." Pierce tried several more angles, but Serena remained unshaken. Her testimony was clear, consistent, and damning. When Pierce finally sat down, Judge Hartwell turned to Jordan. "Do you have any more witnesses, Mr. Jordan?" "No, Your Honor. Ms. Carter's testimony and the evidence I've presented speak for themselves." Judge Hartwell nodded thoughtfully. "They certainly do." As the afternoon session continued, one thing became abundantly clear to everyone in the courtroom. Michael Jordan hadn't just prepared for this case, he had orchestrated every moment of it, and he was far from finished. "Your Honor," Jordan said, rising from his seat, "I'd now like to address the legal remedy I'm seeking." Judge Hartwell nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Jordan." Jordan walked to the center of the courtroom, no longer the fumbling figure from the first day. He moved with purpose, his voice clear and confident. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm not just asking for Apex Sports' patent to be invalidated. I'm requesting a specific legal remedy outlined in the Technological Innovation Protection Act of 2018. A puzzled look crossed Pierce's face. Judge Hartwell also appeared curious. Section 47B of that act, Jordan continued, states that in cases where corporate espionage is proven, the court may issue an order preventing the offending party from developing similar technology for up to 5 years. The courtroom fell silent. Even Judge Hartwell appeared taken aback. "Mr. Jordan," she said, leaning forward, "I'm familiar with technology patent law, but I don't recall that specific provision." "It's relatively obscure, Your Honor," Jordan acknowledged. "It was added as an amendment during the bill's final passage. Few cases have invoked it." He handed a document to the court clerk, who passed it to the judge. She studied it carefully, her eyebrows rising slightly. "He's right," she murmured, almost to herself. Pierce jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is preposterous. Such a remedy would effectively lock Apex Sport out of an entire market segment." "That's precisely the point," Jordan responded calmly. "The law was designed to create serious consequences for corporate espionage. Otherwise, companies would simply treat legal penalties as a cost of doing business." Judge Hartwell was now nodding slightly as she read through the statute. "The language is quite clear," she admitted. "In cases of proven corporate espionage related to technological innovation, the court may issue a development prohibition order." Voss whispered urgently to Pierce, who looked increasingly distressed. "Your Honor," Pierce said, "we need time to review this statute and prepare a response." "That seems reasonable," Judge Hartwell agreed. We'll adjourn for today and reconvene tomorrow morning. She turned to Jordan. I must say, Mr. Jordan, I'm impressed by your knowledge of patent law. Thank you, Your Honor, Jordan replied with a small smile. I've been studying. As the courtroom began to empty, Pierce approached Jordan again, his manner now almost pleading. Be reasonable, Jordan. A 5-year ban would devastate Apex Sports' footwear division. You should have thought of that before stealing my technology, Jordan replied simply. In the gallery, Tara watched the exchange with wide eyes. When Jordan joined her, she couldn't contain her amazement. How did you find that law? She whispered as they left the courtroom. I've never heard of it. Because most lawyers haven't either, Jordan explained. I spent weeks researching obscure patent statutes. When I found this one, I knew it was perfect. Outside the courthouse, reporters once again swarmed around them. Mr. Jordan, is it true you're asking for Apex Sport to be banned from the footwear market? Was your confused act just a strategy to catch them off guard? No comment, Jordan repeated, pushing through the crowd. Back at their temporary office, Tara's excitement bubbled over. You were amazing in there. Voss looked like he was going to pass out when you mentioned that law. Jordan allowed himself a small smile. The case isn't over yet. But it's going our way now, Tara insisted. Judge Hartwell is totally on your side. She's doing her job, Jordan corrected. Judges don't take sides. They follow the law. Which you happen to know better than Apex Sports' expensive lawyers, Tara laughed. Jordan's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it, and his expression turned serious. What is it? Tara asked. Voss's people have been calling Serena Carter, Jordan said, threatening her. That's witness intimidation. We should tell the judge. We will, Jordan assured her. Tomorrow. Meanwhile, at Apex Sports' legal offices, Voss was raging at his legal team. How could you not know about this law? He demanded, pacing the conference room. I pay you millions for exactly this kind of information. Pierce remained calm, despite the attack. It's an obscure provision that's rarely invoked. The question now is how to respond. We fight it, obviously, Voss snapped. I'm not sure that's wise, Pierce cautioned. The evidence against us is substantial. So you're giving up. I'm being realistic. Jordan has outmaneuvered us at every turn. First, he acted incompetent to lower our guard. Then he produced a star witness we never anticipated. Now he's found a legal angle that could cripple our business. Voss collapsed into a chair, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. What are our options? We could settle, Pierce suggested. Offer Jordan a substantial payment and a formal apology. Never, Voss spat. I won't give him the satisfaction. Then our only option is to attack the witness, Pierce said grimly. Discredit Serena Carter. Suggest she stole the documents for personal gain. Imply she's working with Jordan. Will that work? Pierce sighed. Probably not, but it's all we have left. The next morning, the courtroom was even more crowded than before. News of the unusual legal maneuver had spread overnight, and sports technology reporters from around the world packed the gallery. Judge Hartwell called the court to order. Before we continue, I've reviewed the statute Mr. Jordan cited yesterday. It is indeed applicable to this case, provided the evidence of corporate espionage meets the legal standard. She turned to Pierce. Counsel, do you wish to respond to Mr. Jordan's request for a development prohibition order? Pierce stood. Yes, Your Honor. We challenge the credibility of Ms. Carter's testimony and the authenticity of the documents she provided. On what grounds? We believe Ms. Carter may have altered these documents after leaving Apex Sport, possibly in collaboration with Mr. Jordan. Judge Hartwell frowned. That's a serious allegation. Do you have evidence to support it? We're prepared to present technical analysis suggesting the documents were modified recently, Pierce claimed. Jordan rose calmly. Your Honor, I anticipated this attack on Ms. Carter's character. That's why I took the precaution of having the original electronic documents verified by an independent forensic expert. He handed another file to the court clerk. This report confirms the documents are genuine and unaltered. Additionally, I must inform the court that Ms. Carter has received threatening phone calls from Apex Sport representatives since her testimony yesterday. Judge Hartwell's expression darkened. Is that so? Mr. Pierce, does your client know that witness intimidation is a serious offense? Pierce paled. Your Honor, if such calls were made, they were not authorized by Apex Sport management or legal team. Judge Hartwell was clearly not convinced. As the morning proceeded, she watched Jordan with growing admiration. The man who had stumbled through opening statements 2 days ago was now articulating complex legal arguments with remarkable precision. She found herself nodding along with his reasoning, impressed despite herself. And she wasn't the only one. Even some of Apex Sport's junior attorneys were watching him with undisguised respect. In the gallery, Reginald Voss loosened his collar nervously. The confident CEO who had expected an easy victory was now facing a legal disaster of his own making. Your Honor, Pierce said, making one last attempt to salvage their case, we would like to call a technical expert who will testify that Apex Sports' design, while similar to Mr. Jordan's, contains significant differences. Judge Hartwell considered this. I'll allow it. Call your witness. A tall man with a neat beard and glasses approached the stand. After being sworn in, he introduced himself as Dr. Ethan Ramsey, Chief Technical Officer at Pinnacle Sports Systems. Dr. Ramsey, Pierce began, you've examined both companies' shoe designs. In your expert opinion, could Apex Sport have developed their technology independently? Yes, Dr. Ramsey replied confidently. While there are similarities in the overall approach, I noted several distinct engineering choices in Apex Sports' implementation. Could you elaborate? Pierce asked, looking relieved. Certainly. The support system configuration, for instance, uses a different arrangement of channels, and the outer material contains proprietary compounds not present in Mr. Jordan's design. Judge Hartwell listened carefully, her earlier bias now replaced with careful neutrality. She took detailed notes as Dr. Ramsey presented diagrams highlighting the differences. So, in your professional opinion, Pierce concluded, these designs could have been developed independently? It's certainly possible, Dr. Ramsey agreed. Similar problems often lead to similar solutions in engineering. Thank you, Doctor. Pierce turned to Jordan. Your witness. The courtroom tensed as Jordan approached the stand. Instead of attacking Dr. Ramsey directly, Jordan smiled politely. Dr. Ramsey, what's the primary innovation that makes both these shoe designs so efficient? The shock-absorbing lining on the sole, the expert replied without hesitation. And this lining is applied in several distinct layers, correct? Yes, that's right. Jordan nodded. Could you describe the specific sequence of these layers? Dr. Ramsey looked slightly uncomfortable. Well, both designs use a graphene base layer, followed by a titanium composite, then a proprietary ceramic material. Identical proprietary materials? Jordan asked innocently. Well, yes, surprisingly similar. And what are the odds of two companies independently developing identical proprietary materials in identical layering sequences? Dr. Ramsey shifted in his seat. It would be highly unlikely. Jordan continued this approach, asking seemingly innocent technical questions that gradually led Dr. Ramsey into contradicting his own testimony. With each answer, the expert looked increasingly trapped. Let me be direct, Doctor, Jordan finally said. The support system and outer material differences you mentioned, aren't those merely cosmetic changes that don't affect the core technology? After a long pause, Dr. Ramsey sighed. Yes. The fundamental innovation, the shock-absorbing lining, is essentially identical in both designs. From the plaintiff's table, Voss stared daggers at their expert witness. No further questions, Jordan said, returning to his seat. After Dr. Ramsey stepped down. Pierce approached the bench. Your Honor, we would like to call Mr. Voss to testify directly. Judge Hartwell nodded. Proceed. Voss took the stand, straightening his expensive tie. After being sworn in, he projected confidence despite his earlier nervousness. Mr. Voss, Pierce began, did you instruct your team to copy Mr. Jordan's technology? Absolutely not, Voss stated firmly. I visited his facility as a potential partner. When that didn't work out, I directed our existing research team to continue their work on athletic shoe solutions. And was Apex Sport already developing similar technology? Yes. We had been researching advanced shoe designs for years. The timing of our breakthrough shortly after my visit to Jordan Performance was coincidental. Pierce nodded. Ms. Carter claims you showed photos from your visit and specifically ordered the team to copy Mr. Jordan's design. How do you respond? That's completely false, Voss declared. Ms. Carter was a disgruntled employee who became increasingly difficult after being passed over for promotion. These accusations are her way of retaliating. Judge Hartwell watched Voss carefully, noting his confident delivery. He was a polished witness, well prepared by his legal team. No further questions, Pierce said, sitting down. The courtroom fell silent as Jordan stood for cross-examination. He approached Voss slowly, calmly. Mr. Voss, you testified that Apex Sport was already developing similar technology before your visit to my facility. Is that correct? Yes, Voss replied firmly. Could you explain the basic principles of your pre-existing research? Voss hesitated slightly. We were exploring various linings for shoe soles. Could you be more specific about the composition of these linings? I'm not a technical person, Voss evaded. I rely on my research team for those details. Yet you're the CEO who signed off on the patent application, Jordan noted. Surely you understood what you were patenting. Voss's confidence began to crack. In general terms, yes. Jordan changed direction suddenly. During your visit to my facility, did you take any photos? No. Did anyone in your team take photos? Not to my knowledge. Jordan nodded thoughtfully. I see. He walked to his table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this security footage as evidence. He played a clip clearly showing Voss's assistant photographing restricted areas. Perhaps your memory needs refreshing, Jordan suggested mildly. Voss's face flushed. I wasn't aware my assistant was taking photos. Really? Because in this next clip you can be seen looking directly at her while she does it. The courtroom murmured as the damning footage played. Jordan continued methodically, asking questions that gradually boxed Voss into a corner. With each answer, the CEO contradicted either his previous testimony or the documented evidence. Finally, Jordan delivered his masterstroke. Mr. Voss, are you familiar with this notebook? He held up a small, leather-bound journal. Voss's eyes widened in recognition. Where did you get that? Ms. Carter provided it. It's your personal notebook, isn't it? Yes, but it was stolen from my office. Actually, Jordan corrected. Ms. Carter was asked to clean out your office after a water leak. This was among the items she was instructed to salvage. Jordan opened the notebook to a marked page. Would you please read this entry, dated the day after your visit to my facility? Voss remained silent. If you prefer, I can read it, Jordan offered. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, may I? Judge Hartwell nodded, completely engrossed. Saw Jordan's new shoe tech today, Jordan read aloud. Revolutionary shock-absorbing lining. Need to fast-track our version before he patents it. Assign Serena's team to reverse engineer ASAP. The courtroom erupted in excited whispers. Voss's face had gone pale. No further questions, Jordan said quietly. The courtroom remained silent as Voss returned to his seat, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Judge Hartwell checked her watch. We'll take a 15-minute recess, she announced. When we return, I'd like to see both parties in my chambers. As people filed out, reporters rushed to file updates. The story had exploded overnight, with sports news sites running live blogs of the proceedings. Jordan's legal genius stuns court, read one headline already circulating on phones around the room. In the hallway, Pierce cornered Voss. "This is a disaster," he hissed. "We need to settle immediately." "It's too late for that," Voss muttered, loosening his tie further. "He's going for blood." Inside her chambers, Judge Hartwell sat behind her desk, removing her glasses and rubbing the bridge of her nose. 30 years on the bench, and she'd rarely seen such a complete reversal in a case. When both parties entered, she gestured to the chairs in front of her desk. "Please sit." Jordan and Pierce sat down. Voss remained standing, too agitated to settle. "I've called you here because this case has taken an extraordinary turn," Judge Hartwell began. "Mr. Pierce, given the evidence presented, I strongly suggest your client considers settlement options." Pierce nodded grimly. "We're prepared to discuss terms, Your Honor." "I'm not," Voss cut in. "This isn't over yet." Judge Hartwell fixed him with a stern gaze. "Mr. Voss, you should understand your position. The evidence against you is overwhelming. If I rule against Apex Sport, which seems increasingly likely, you face not only the loss of the patent, but a 5-year ban from the market. Additionally, this could trigger criminal investigations." Voss paled but remained defiant. "There are appeals courts." "Yes," the judge agreed, "and they generally defer to the trial court's findings of fact. The facts here are quite damning." She turned to Jordan. "Mr. Jordan, would you be open to settlement discussions?" Jordan considered this for a moment. "I came here for justice, not money. The 5-year development ban is non-negotiable." Voss huffed in frustration. "That's unreasonable." "What's unreasonable," Jordan replied calmly, "is stealing someone else's work and then suing them for it." Judge Hartwell leaned back in her chair, studying Jordan with newfound respect. Then she did something unexpected. "Mr. Jordan," she said, her tone softening slightly, "I owe you an apology." Everyone in the room looked surprised, Jordan included. "I made assumptions about you when this trial began," she continued. "I thought you were arrogant and unprepared. I was wrong, and my behavior was unprofessional." Jordan nodded in acceptance of her apology. "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge hesitated, then added, "I feel I should explain something." She glanced at Voss and Pierce. "Would you gentlemen excuse us for a moment?" After they left, Judge Hartwell rose and walked to her window, looking out at the city skyline. "4 years ago, my son worked for Peak Pulse Sports," she said quietly. "When your company acquired them, he lost his job in the restructuring. He struggled for months afterward." Jordan's eyes widened in recognition. "I remember that acquisition. We had to eliminate redundant positions." "I know," she acknowledged. "It was a business decision, nothing personal, but as a mother—" She shook her head. "I allowed it to color my initial impression of you. That was wrong of me." "I understand," Jordan said. "Business decisions affect real people. I try to remember that." Judge Hartwell turned back to him. "Your legal strategy was brilliant. The way you appeared unprepared to lower their guard. I've never seen anything like it." "Sometimes innovative thinking applies outside of sports design," Jordan replied with a small smile. A knock at the door interrupted them. The clerk poked her head in. "Judge, Mr. Voss is asking to speak with Mr. Jordan privately." Judge Hartwell raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual." "I'll hear what he has to say," Jordan agreed. When Voss entered alone, his demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the arrogant CEO. Now he looked like a desperate man. "Jordan," he said without preamble, "name your price. Whatever you want, just drop the 5-year ban. It's not about money, Jordan replied. Everyone has a price, Voss insisted. 10 million? 20? The ban stands, Jordan said firmly. Your company tried to steal years of my team's work. There are consequences for that. Voss's face darkened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me squirm? No, Jordan replied honestly. I'd have preferred a fair competition where we both innovated on our own merits. Judge Hartwell watched this exchange with interest. These were two powerful men, but only one had maintained his integrity. Gentlemen, she finally said, I think we've said all that needs saying here. Let's return to the courtroom and conclude this matter properly. As they filed out, Voss made one last desperate plea. Jordan, be reasonable. But Jordan had already moved on, his mind clearly focused on the future beyond this case. He had what he wanted, justice and protection for his company's innovations. Back in the courtroom, the gallery fell silent as they returned. Tara caught Jordan's eye from her seat, raising her eyebrows in question. He gave her a small nod, and she smiled in relief. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Hartwell announced, I'm prepared to rule on this matter after final statements. Mr. Pierce, Mr. Jordan, please prepare to deliver your closing arguments. As Pierce shuffled his papers nervously, Jordan sat calmly, his notes organized neatly before him. The outcome was no longer in doubt. He had won. Mr. Pierce, your closing statement, Judge Hartwell directed. Pierce stood, his earlier confidence gone. Your Honor, while the evidence presented by Mr. Jordan is concerning, we maintain that Apex Sport developed its technology through legitimate means. Ms. Carter's testimony should be viewed with skepticism, given her departure from the company under difficult circumstances. He continued for several more minutes, his arguments weak and unconvincing even to his own ears. Voss sat with his head down, no longer the proud CEO who had strode into court days earlier. Thank you, Mr. Pierce, Judge Hartwell said when he finished. Mr. Jordan approached the bench. Unlike his fumbling first appearance, he now stood tall, his voice clear and measured. Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. Apex Sports' CEO visited my facility, secretly photographed proprietary technology, and directed his team to copy it. Their own documents and witnesses confirm this. Justice requires not just invalidating their fraudulent patent, but implementing the 5-year development ban to ensure there are meaningful consequences for corporate espionage. Short, simple, and devastating. Jordan returned to his seat as a murmur spread through the courtroom. Judge Hartwell nodded. I'll deliver my ruling now. The courtroom fell silent. Everyone knew this case had implications far beyond these two companies. It would set a precedent for how corporate espionage cases were handled throughout the sports industry. This court has carefully considered all evidence presented, Judge Hartwell began. The testimony of Serena Carter, corroborated by electronic communications and Mr. Voss's own notes, establishes clear evidence of corporate espionage. Voss closed his eyes in defeat. Therefore, Apex Sports patent number 100876261 is hereby invalidated, she continued. She paused, then added, Furthermore, pursuant to Section 47B of the Technological Innovation Protection Act, Apex Sport Industries is prohibited from developing or marketing similar athletic shoe technology for a period of 5 years from today. Gasps echoed around the courtroom. She wasn't just ruling in Jordan's favor, she was granting his full requested remedy. Additionally, Apex Sport shall pay damages of $20 million to Mr. Ahom, Jordan's company, for attempted patent infringement, plus all legal costs associated with this case. She looked directly at Voss. This court also refers this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for review of potential criminal charges related to industrial espionage and perjury. Voss's face went pale. Pierce placed a steadying hand on his client's arm. "Before we conclude," Judge Hartwell added, "I wish to address something." She removed her glasses, looking directly at the gallery filled with reporters. "When this trial began, I made assumptions about Mr. Jordan representing himself. I doubted his abilities, and, I regret to say, made comments that were unprofessional." Murmurs spread through the courtroom at this unusual admission. "The court stands corrected," she stated formally. "Mr. Jordan has demonstrated that innovative thinking applies to legal strategy as well as sports design. His preparation and presentation of this case were exemplary." Jordan nodded in acknowledgement of her words. "Court is adjourned," Judge Hartwell announced, banging her gavel for the final time. The courtroom erupted in excited conversation. Reporters rushed for the doors, eager to file their stories. Voss and Pierce huddled with their team, faces grim. Tara hurried to Jordan's side. "We did it," she exclaimed, eyes shining. "You were amazing." "We were amazing," Jordan corrected her. "Your design expertise was crucial." As they gathered their materials, Judge Hartwell approached. "Mr. Jordan, a word?" Tara excused herself, leaving them alone. "Remarkable case," the judge said. "I've never seen anything quite like it." "Thank you, Your Honor." "May I ask a question? That first day, was it all an act?" Jordan smiled slightly. "Not entirely. I was nervous. But yes, appearing unprepared was strategic." Judge Hartwell shook her head in amazement. "Brilliantly executed." She hesitated, then added, "My son found a new job, by the way. He's doing well now." "I'm glad to hear it," Jordan replied sincerely. "Well," she said, extending her hand, "congratulations on your victory." As they shook hands, something passed between them, a mutual respect that hadn't existed days earlier. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Jordan. "Mr. Jordan, how does it feel to win? Was your strategy planned from the beginning? Will you pursue criminal charges against Voss?" Jordan raised his hands for quiet. "I came here seeking justice, not revenge. The ruling speaks for itself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." He made his way through the crowd to where Tara waited with their car. As they drove away from the courthouse, Tara couldn't contain her curiosity. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Jordan looked out the window, already thinking ahead. "Now we get back to what matters, building things that change the world." But even as he said it, he knew this case had changed something important, not just for his company, but for the entire sports industry. The next time a company considered stealing someone else's innovation, they would remember what happened to Apex Sport. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would think twice. 2 months later, a sleek black car pulled up to the security gate at Jordan Performance headquarters. Judge Abigail Hartwell showed her ID to the guard, who checked his list and waved her through. She had retired from the bench 1 month after the Apex Sport case, surprising many in the legal community. 30 years was enough, she had told reporters. Time for new challenges. In the lobby, Tara Lynn greeted her with a smile. "Judge Hartwell, it's good to see you again. Please, call me Abigail," the former judge replied, returning the smile. "I'm not on the bench anymore." "Michael is waiting for you in the studio," Tara said, leading the way. "He's excited about the tour." They walked through bright corridors where designers and engineers worked on projects that would shape the future. Abigail noticed the energy in the air, a sense of purpose and innovation that reminded her of her own youth. Jordan met them at the entrance to the main design studio, dressed in his usual simple attire. "Judge Hartwell, welcome to our facility." "Thank you for inviting me," she replied. "And please, it's Abigail now." Jordan nodded. "Abigail, then. Ready to see what we're working on?" For the next hour, he guided her through various sections of the studio. He explained their latest advances in athletic footwear, now protected from Apex Sports interference, and several other projects that left her amazed. "This is incredible," she said, as they paused by a window overlooking the testing grounds. "So different from the world of law." "Is that why you retired?" Jordan asked. "Looking for something different?" "Partly," she admitted. 30 years of other people's problems takes a toll. I was ready for a change." They continued to a quieter section of the building, entering a small conference room with a view of the skyline. Coffee waited for them on the table. "I have a confession to make," Jordan said as they sat down. "There's a reason I invited you here today." "I suspected as much," Abigail replied, sipping her coffee. "What is it?" Jordan studied her for a moment. "During the trial, did you ever wonder why I chose to represent myself?" "It wasn't just strategy. I wanted to face you directly." Abigail frowned. "Face me? Why?" "Because I knew who you were," Jordan said simply. "Not just as a judge, but as an engineer." She stared at him, coffee forgotten. "What do you mean?" "Before your law career, you were Abigail Hartwell of Northwestern, who created a revolutionary shoe design in the 1980s. Abigail set down her cup, her hand trembling slightly. "How did you know that? It was so long ago." "I make it my business to know the history of my field," Jordan explained. "Your design was ahead of its time. A company called Vertex Sports stole it from you, as I recall." "Yes," she said quietly. "They did. I was young, naive. I showed them my prototype, thinking they would help develop it. Instead, they claimed it as their own." "Which is why you went to law school," Jordan added, "to make sure it wouldn't happen to others." Abigail nodded, surprised by how well he understood her story. "Did you know you were assigned to my case because of your technical background?" Jordan asked. "Of course. The court often matches judges with relevant expertise to cases." "What you didn't know," Jordan continued, "is that I discovered this connection early on. I researched your background thoroughly once I knew you'd be presiding." Understanding dawned in Abigail's eyes. "You designed your entire legal strategy to appeal to both my technical understanding and my personal history," Jordan confirmed. "I knew you'd recognize what Voss had done because it happened to you." "So all that fumbling on the first day," she began, "was to make everyone underestimate me," Jordan confirmed with a smile. "Including you." To his surprise, Abigail laughed. "I should be offended that you manipulated the court this way." "I prefer to think of it as understanding my audience," Jordan replied. "The evidence was real. The law was real. I just presented it in a way I knew would resonate with you." "Brilliant," she acknowledged. "Absolutely brilliant." They sat in silence for a moment. Two minds who had found unexpected common ground. "So," Abigail finally asked, "why am I really here today? Surely not just for a tour and a revelation." "No," Jordan agreed. "I have a proposition for you." He opened a folder on the table and slid it toward her. Inside was a contract. "I need someone who understands both sports design and law to help our legal department," he explained. "Someone who can protect our innovations while helping us navigate complex regulatory issues." Abigail raised an eyebrow. "You want to hire me?" "I want to partner with you," Jordan corrected. "Your experience, both as an engineer who was wronged and as a judge who protected innovation, makes you uniquely qualified." "I haven't practiced law in 30 years, she pointed out. "You don't need to. You'll have a team of attorneys under you. What I need is your judgment and understanding of both worlds." Abigail thumbed through the contract, considering the offer. "It would be quite a change." "Change drives innovation," Jordan replied, "and I suspect you didn't retire just to play golf." She laughed again. "You have me there." Standing up, Abigail walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. For decades, she had enforced the law from the bench. Now she had a chance to protect innovation from within, to help create, rather than just judge. She turned back to Jordan. Before I decide, I have one question. Was any of this, your strategy in court, this job offer, about revenge because my son lost his position when you acquired Peak Pulse? No, Jordan answered honestly. That was a business decision, nothing personal. This is also a business decision. I believe you're the right person for this role. Satisfied with his answer, Abigail made her decision. She removed her judicial robe, which she had brought with her in a garment bag, and draped it over the chair, symbolically leaving her old role behind. Sometimes, she said, echoing Jordan's earlier words to Tara, you have to do things yourself. Jordan stood and extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Abigail. As they shook hands, both knew this was the beginning of something significant. Two brilliant minds who had first met as adversaries, now united in a common purpose. And somewhere across town, in a nearly empty office, Reginald Voss packed the last of his belongings. Apex Sports Board had forced him to resign. The 5-year ban had devastated their footwear division, and criminal charges were still pending. He had thought himself clever, stealing ideas instead of creating them. Now he understood what Michael Jordan had known all along. True innovation cannot be stolen. It must be earned. Thanks for reading Judge Laughs at Michael Jordan in Court, then Gets Stunned by His Legal Genius. I hope you enjoyed this story of unexpected courtroom brilliance. Where are you tuning in from today? Drop your location in the comments below. If this story brightened your day, please hit that like button to help spread some kindness to others who might enjoy it too. And if you want more engaging stories like this one, click on the next story appearing on your screen right now. Until next time.